Try as they might, the Liberals just can't seem to turn the page on the SNC-Lavalin controversy. Today, the pressure came from outside the party and from within. While the opposition are using hours of parliamentary votes to try and force the government into letting two former cabinet ministers speak, today one of them did, in a way. And as Katie Simpson explains, that brought its own kind of pressure.
It is very simple. We will let them sleep when they let her speak.
Mr. Sajjan.
Trying to wear the Liberals down, the Conservatives forced an all-night vote-a-thon in protest of the SNC-Lavalin affair. With every passing hour,
the next question is on opposed vote number 4, vote number 76, vote number 133.
The opposition tried to pressure the government into waiving all confidentiality around the controversy because it says some involved have been silenced, an argument that is gaining traction thanks to Jane Philpott. In an interview with Maclean's magazine, the former cabinet minister accused her party of trying to shut down the affair. There's much more to the story that should be told, she said. I believe we actually owe it to Canadians as politicians to ensure that they have the truth.
The issue of privilege is not one to take lightly in any government.
The Prime Minister does not appear ready to waive any more rules, but members of his team, including longtime Liberal MP Judy Sgro, say that is not necessary.
They're under no restrictions. They can walk into the House of Commons right now and say parliamentary privilege, Mr. Speaker, and say whatever they want.
Sgro says both Philpott and former Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould enjoy what is known as parliamentary privilege, a set of rules that protect MPs from legal consequences when speaking in certain places, including the House of Commons.
So there's absolutely no reason that we have to have all this innuendo lurking around about this, that, and the rest of it. That's the platform. As parliamentarians, we have the House of Commons, and that's where they both should be going.
This former House of Commons law clerk agrees both former ministers would be protected by privilege.
In my view, they are totally at liberty to say whatever they want in the House or in appearing before a committee.
So far, no Liberal is publicly calling for Philpott to be turfed over her comments.
Well, I know that I really value having her in caucus. I value her as a member.
But the patience of some is wearing thin.
Yeah, I think that there has been political damage. I agree with that. You know, it's one thing to take a hit from the opposition or circumstances beyond caucus or cabinet. It's another thing to take political hits from your own people.
Katie is outside the House of Commons tonight. Okay, some Liberals clearly now expressing frustration, Katie. So why don't Philpott and Jody Wilson-Raybould just quit caucus?
Jane Philpott acknowledged in that interview that what she said publicly has hurt some of her colleagues. And that hurt might run really deep, given that Philpott was so respected by her peers as an effective leader. Philpott says she's still a Liberal. She does not want to see Andrew Scheer become Prime Minister, so she's staying on the team. But moving forward, Jane Philpott, as she has said in that interview, part of the reason why she is speaking out is that she's hoping to make the Liberal Party the best version of the party it can be. Rosie.
Okay. All right, Katie Simpson here in Ottawa tonight for us. Thank you, Katie. That marathon voting session is a political pressure tactic by the Conservatives, but it's important to note that these are votes of confidence. So losing just one could actually trigger an election, and that almost seemed to have happened this afternoon.
The next question is on opposed vote number 126.
So the opposition said dozens of Liberal MPs got to their seats after the vote had already started, making them then ineligible to vote. The Speaker ruled that it wasn't up to him, though, to monitor attendance and left it to the, quote, honour of individual MPs to decide if they should vote or not. So it went ahead a second time, and yes, the Liberal government survived. So no election for now. Where do things go from here? At Issue will have their say in a...
Just moments ago, a story broke in Maclean's magazine in which the outgoing Liberal Treasury Board President said, and I quote, that there is more to this story.
Given Ms. Philpott's interview, given everything that we've heard, more than ever, we need a public inquiry.
The question really is for Jane or Jody that say what you got to say.
We recognize that a diversity of perspectives, of experiences, of opinions is extraordinarily important.
The government's attempts to change the channel and sell the budget, which is what the Prime Minister is trying to do there, just got a whole lot more difficult. Between Jane Philpott's interview in Maclean's and the marathon voting session in the House of Commons, the SNC-Lavalin controversy isn't over yet. So where does it all go from here? At issue, back for the second time this week. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Althea Raj is in Ottawa, and Jason Markusoff joins us from Calgary tonight. Good to see everybody. So let's start with the interview that Paul Wells, our friend, did for Maclean's. I just want to show people a little bit more, if you haven't read it, of what Jane Philpott told him. The following, quote, "I believe the former Attorney General has further points to make. I believe that I have further issues of concern that I'm not free to share." She goes on, "My sense is that Canadians would like to know the whole story. I believe we actually owe it to Canadians as politicians to ensure that they have the truth." She didn't at any point say any sort of detail in terms of what else had to be said, just sort of left that out there, dangling out there. Chantal, what do you make of her comments to Paul?
Oh, I'm perplexed. If I knew something that I deemed to be essential to Canadians, and I had resigned from cabinet on the basis of all that I knew, and I had means to tell what I have to say, and she does, I would not be giving interviews to tease the public into going, so what is it? And I think that this interview basically has pushed both Ms. Philpott and Ms. Wilson-Raybould to the point of either you have something to say and you do say it in the House of Commons under parliamentary privilege, or hold your peace.
She also says in the interview, Althea, that she doesn't feel like she can say it. I mean, we can have that debate over parliamentary procedure, what she could use, but that's what she feels, that she is not comfortable or safe saying these things because she has not had cabinet confidence waived. Althea.
Well, there are a number of tools at her disposal that are not holding a press conference publicly and perhaps breaching any cabinet confidence she's worried about that deal with the period of time after the January shuffle. I mean, she's free to basically say anything up to that point where Jerry Butts spoke in at the committee about the January shuffle. She could go to the House of Commons and talk about whatever she wants. She is protected under privilege as a member of Parliament. Mm-hmm. So she has a number of avenues. So does Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould. They don't need to wait for the opposition to invite them to committee. They can write a brief to the committee if they wish, outlining the things that they wish that they had said or had the opportunity to say that the other witnesses, like Michael Warnick, like Nathalie Drouin, came and spoke about. If there's anything they want to counter, they could use a brief. There are a number of avenues at their disposal, and I think we are reaching the point where now you have caucus members coming out and saying, well, if you've got something to say, well, then say it. Otherwise, what are you doing? And if Ms. Philpott did not want to enrage her caucus colleagues, as many Liberals are today, why would she be giving an interview 2 days after the Liberal government has tabled its budget? There is no scenario under which she did not know that this was going to cause them great harm. She could have waited until next week when Parliament is not sitting. So there's a lot of questions about motivation and intention here that I think a lot of people are asking.
She does say that she is aware she is hurting her Liberal colleagues. We actually saw some of them today, Jason, start to say that publicly, that frustration. But the analogy I used early this morning when this came out was it's sort of like the two of them are burning down the house, but they're standing in the middle of the house while it's happening. So what do you make of what she has done and why she would have talked to Paul?
She strikes me as somebody who's very, very tortured on this, very conflicted. I mean, it almost seemed like a bit of a dramatic Shakespearean, perhaps, soliloquy. I don't want to hurt my team. I don't want Andrew Scheer to do this. I want the Liberals, though, to be better Liberals. It seems like she's almost goading Trudeau and Jerry Butts to say more so that she doesn't have to, that she doesn't want to be holding a knife toward them. She wants to have an opportunity for either Jody Wilson-Raybould or herself to be given the right to speak. Somebody from the Trudeau government to say, "Let the truth set you free," and say what you will. We have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
She's clearly is not happy with this at this point, but she doesn't want to hurt the Liberal Party, although she clearly is.
Yeah, Chantal.
Yeah. Certainly to the Liberal parties themselves, they'll see it that way.
Yeah. Okay, Chantal.
But 2 points. One, she is not, as far as I can tell, at the center of the story. She was not the Attorney General, and she has now positioned herself in a starring role with revelations. If this story is about undue pressure on an Attorney General, I'm curious to see how central she can be to that story. Second, it is now clear that she's gunning for the Prime Minister. Why is it clear? Because everyone else is dead. That's the last person of importance really standing. Sorry, other staffers. And as Jody Wilson-Raybould did in her testimony, she keeps placing the Prime Minister front and center in everything that she has to say.
Yeah.
So having gotten the clerk of the Privy Council and the principal secretary, you have to think that if you want to be still a Liberal and you hope that they stay in power, but you're still doing this, you want the head of the Prime Minister.
Except she also, I agree with you, Jason, she does seem very conflicted, and maybe that's I don't know, maybe that's real or not. I'm not sure. You know, I'm not inside her head. Certainly I've asked for an interview as well. But she also seems to be she's not directly involved in anything she's talking about. A lot of the things that she is referring to are, I assume, things that she has heard from Jody Wilson-Raybould. She was not part of the meetings that Jody Wilson-Raybould outlined. So it's unclear to me what else she would have to, and maybe there's something, I don't know, but what else she would have to say around that. Althea, you want to weigh in there?
I don't think that she is talking about herself wanting to say that much more. I think she is really speaking on behalf of Jody Wilson-Raybould and arguing that Ms. Raybould should be given a chance to speak, and this sort of teasing that there is much more to the story that needs to be told and the public deserves to be told. Well, okay, then tell us. But to Chantal's point, I think Ms. Wilson-Raybould is actually gunning still for some staffers, but I agree that it seems like the eye is on the Prime Minister, and I think it's very telling that both women are not in the House of Commons at the moment, as we are recording this, voting in a slew of confidence measures supporting this government, which kind of begs the question what they're still doing in caucus, and frankly, what the government's handling, the Prime Minister's office handling of this whole issue has been, because there are a lot of caucus members who would like to be given the chance to vote to boot these women out.
Okay, Joe Biden reported today that they were actually told not to show up for votes because it would create too much tension with their colleagues there, which I know is a whole other problem. But so let's just talk about then the opposition tactics over the past 24, 48 hours, trying to show this outrage, keep the story alive. I don't know how much credit they get for keeping it alive when really I think it's this interview that did it. So how effective has that strategy been, Jason? And then what on earth does the government do at this stage? What does Justin Trudeau do?
I mean, I think back to the last major scandal that actually did ultimately take down a government, the sponsorship scandal, and the Liberal sponsorship scandal from a decade ago. And I can't for the life of me remember anything that the opposition under Stephen Harper said at that point. Every interesting inflection point of that whole saga, except for a couple of dramatic House votes, were all based on different shoes dropping in inquiries and investigations and revelations and leaks. And so it is for this. I kind of liken this filibuster vote thing to a truck convoy. I realize it's a bit of a pungent comparison of these days, but a truck convoy is something that clogs up traffic, and people look at it and say, why are these guys holding up traffic? Why are all these trucks angry? What are they doing? And somebody will say to them, it's this issue, and everybody else will say, oh, okay. It's a good way to attract attention, but I don't think anybody's going to, the to what is like just a one-sentence thing.
Yeah, okay, so Chantal, given that, I think that's a good analogy. What does Justin Trudeau do now?
That's a very good question. I'm glad he has to answer it for himself. I can only say...
What might he do then? What might he do?
I think that the government did draw a line in the sand when they decided that, or the Liberal majority on the committee decided they didn't want to hear any more witnesses. You can't draw lines deep in the sand and then back off and change those lines forever. I would say, on the basis of having covered Brian Mulroney, Jean Chrétien, I think Stephen Harper obviously I think even Paul Martin would all have shown the door to Ms. Philpott and Ms. Wilson-Raybould at this point.
So there are mixed feelings on that front from the people I've spoken to. Some people concerned that they will be turned further into martyrs of a cause, and some people, and we saw some of them publicly today, saying this is untenable. So I don't know what's the best way forward, but there is obviously pressure on him as a leader to
be a leader. Yeah.
Well, to act proactively. Yeah. Althea, what do you think is the next move that we might see here, or how they contain it?
I think he's made his views known, and it would be hard for him to backtrack on that and on this idea that the Liberal Party is a Big Tent party and we accept people with divergent views, and they've still committed to Liberal ideals in the party. And, you know, they were tweeting about the budget, so one assumes that they like the budget. But I think that just in terms of cabinet caucus solidarity, his team, leadership of his team, and not appearing weak, frankly, he should let the caucus decide if they want these women in the team or not.
What do you think, Jason?
I mean, I think that it's probably best for him to do to make it a team decision. I think that would be certainly a good deference to his team. But this is somebody who's been very centralizing throughout his government, and I think he's aware that there's already been this sting about this. So many headlines about him being a fake feminist. What's he really done for reconciliation? Having turfed or having alienated and bullied his top Indigenous cabinet minister. So I think he, and certainly a lot of caucus, is wary of the political implications of ejecting people at this point.
Is this something, Chantal, last word to you, is this something where, I don't know if this is going too far, but where Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott are trying to redefine the Liberal Party and do it so that it no longer has anything to do with the leader? Is that going too far?
Yes. If this were a Paul Martin situation, if there was someone inside caucus who looked like an obvious great alternative to Justin Trudeau, we would be talking about something very different. And if this were not on the eve of an election, but at this point, I think most caucus members agreed that they're going to sink or swim with Justin Trudeau next fall, and that neither of these women is going to be the leader of the party anytime soon. So they are redefining behavior, but I'm not sure that they are shaping a new mold for behavior.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast, for extra content this week. We're talking about probably Jason's favorite subject this week anyway, the Alberta election. It was also called this week. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website.